Wow, okay. That is the end of the game. Well, I wasn't expecting to beat the game today. Probably mark that for whatchamacallit. Okay. Lost Kingdoms 2. Conquered. I feel like this game was shorter than the first one. Probably was. Um I didn't write down my thoughts for this one because I knew it was going to be a short game, but I didn't think I was going to beat it today. So, that's definitely a catch 22. Yeah, overall thoughts on this game. I think this game is not as good as the first one, as crazy as this is going to be sounding. Um, I I applaud the the extra effort that went into this game, but I don't think I just like the changes that they made, and it was kind of hard for me to get my head around just the changes in general, I suppose. It's such an interesting direction, I suppose. But yeah, I would say overall, like it's okay. It's okay. It's for me, it's not as good as the first game. Uh, but it's not. I want to say it's not worse than the first game, but that's kind of a weird thing to say. It's not as good as the first game, but I don't think there's much distance um, apart from them. As far as like the story, I think this game has just as little story as the first game. Silent protagonist. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Uh, it's like we're given a sentence, and that sentence is supposed to carry the entire game, and it just doesn't work for me. It needs more, um, but it is what it is. For gameplay mechanics and design, um, this okay. This is going to be weird. Um, I liked that in the first Lost Kingdoms game, whenever you got into a battle, you would go into like this arena, uh, and you would fight, the enemies there. I preferred that method, but I also prefer how they treated encounters in Lost Kingdoms 2, where they're on the world map and you can choose to avoid them. But I don't like how you fight the enemies on the map, whereas I prefer fighting the enemies in Lost Kingdoms 1, where it's like in a specialized arena that you can have cards to take advantage of that. It's always going to be relatively the same. But in Lost Kingdoms 2, it's just kind of like you can wander around and do whatever you want, and it was a weird change. And there were changes to cards that made it so that it was easier to accommodate for this new style of combat. And it's not like super different, like the combat is still the same. It's just I the presentation comes to mind at first, but that's not really where I want to go with it. It's just that there's it hits like a fork in the road, but again, like the distance is not that far, so it's just like it splits off a little bit and then it straightens out again and goes. um I, I think when it comes down to it is the the combat in Lost Kingdoms 2. Again, this is going to sound weird. Seems to lend itself more to an action game, and I feel like Lost Kingdoms 1 was still an action game, but there was an element of strategy to it that I think was uh, reduced in Lost Kingdoms 2. Seems like there's less cards to upgrade. Cards are more expensive, so like they have a very specific plan. And then on top of that, they introduce a new mechanic that is intertwined with your deck where you can transform. But the thing about the transform cards is that they take spots in your deck. And so it creates so many problems where I reach a point where I need to use a specific card to progress. I got to cycle through my entire deck to find it. Maybe I don't have it. Well, I could restart the level and walk, all the way back, avoiding monsters, what have you. I can try to recover my cards if I built my deck that way. Um, or I can run into blue fairies and just hope that that card comes back. It seems like an oversight there. They definitely should have made the transform cards not cards in your deck, but like a side deck or something like that, a sideboard where it's like, oh, I need to use a transform card. Let me swap over to my sideboard. I'll take a card in my hand, swap it, and boom. Now I don't have access to the card that I swapped until I'm done using the transform card. And when I'm done using it, then it can come back or something like that. A little bit more decision making that way, perhaps. Probably not a whole lot of room on the screen for that, but there's certainly ways to do it. Little icons, something, what have you. So yeah, I think as weird as it sounds, the way combat is presented in this game, I think is better. I think having like random encounters is not really a good way to approach this game. But if they kind of merge the systems where you have enemies on the map and you run into them and then you go into like this arena style and start fighting, I think that would be the best of both worlds for me personally. There's also this, like, if you go down to critical health, like the lower you go, the more crippled you become, and you start walking slower and all this other stuff. That stuff is atrocious. I don't remember if that was in Lost Kingdoms 1. I don't think so, but that needs to go. It's one of those situations where it's like, oh, I got hit for that. I lost some HP for that. That's my punishment. But on top of that punishment, now I'm moving slower, so it's even harder for me to dodge the attacks that I need to dodge, which just compiles the problems on top of itself. And so in that case, it presents the question of, should I just die and have to redo the entire level all over again? Because that would be less frustrating and potentially even quicker than trying to recover from this state of dodging when it's not very feasible to dodge. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. As far as like the general cards go for the game, I do like that there was a lot of return cards that did not change too much, but I do think that a lot of the cards that they did change, it was kind of weird how they did it, but it is what it is. You got to nerf some cards. The deck that I had in Lost Kingdoms 1 was pretty overpowered. So there is that. I don't have anything. I think for like the music, Some of the music in this game was pretty nice. You know, I'm gonna add this one to my level up this playlist spreadsheet, and you know, I'll get to this one eventually. For let's see, I don't have anything else off the top of my head, so I guess if the developer is watching, um, I I I think the game's okay. But when I say that the game is okay, I'm not necessarily a fan of, I guess, the gameplay and the story presentation and how it goes. I like the concept of using cards that are monsters and throwing them onto the field and like fighting and things like that. I like that there are some weapon cards and there's some summon cards and there's independent cards, there's helper cards. I like the categories. I like how they interact and there's like these combos that you can do. But I think there's a disconnect for me when there's mechanics or there's advantages that enemies can take that make victory insurmountable, I guess, for me. There's been some occasions where, you know, like in the first game, I just get stun locked and I died. And in this game, you know, like I get stun locked and I died. I still think that the magic crystal scenario is like a big issue. If you run out of magic crystals, what do? You know, you have to restart the level all over again? You know, like sure you can use cards to attack enemies and stuff like that, but you're not guaranteed to get enough magic crystals to really make a dent. So you're just continually reducing your HP until you die. And I genuinely feel that is a flaw in the Lost Kingdoms system. I had originally thought that it regenerated over time, which I think is a decent compromise, you know, especially for bosses. There's a lot of bosses out there. As a matter of fact, I think all the bosses that I remember fighting did not drop magic crystals to pick up. So there was an issue there for sure. But yeah, if a Lost Kingdoms 3 came out, I wouldn't say that I would be excited to play it, and I wouldn't say that I would be very interested in playing it just off of the announcement, but it would be something that I'll be like, oh, you know, Lost Kingdoms. I played the first game, I played the second game. You know, let me see what they're gonna do with the third one, and I'll watch some trailers. You know, keep an eye on it. I'd put it on my radar basically, and if I can keep an eye on it, I'll keep an eye on it. But I doubt it would be a game that I would play on release, and it would probably be something I play, well after it comes out. So, anyways, that appears to be the end of today. So I'm gonna save, and yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. See ya the next time I see you. Peace.